Can you spell cat?
Huh?
Cat, damn it. Can you spell cat? We want guys with experience up here.
The tragic truth behind Jack Soo's decision to leave Barney Miller is ultimately revealed. With his deadpan humor and awful coffee, he brought laughter to America as Detective Nick Yemana. However, in his penultimate episode, his final words, "I have nothing to add," took on a terrible new significance that no one anticipated. Finally, the reality behind his abrupt departure has come to light, along with the heartbreaking homage that made television history when the actors couldn't hold back their emotions any longer. At the outset of his existence, Jack Soo experienced events that seemed tailor-made for him. Although Garo Suzuki came into this world on October 28, 1917, he did not do so on land or in a hospital. While en route from America to Japan, he was born aboard a ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Despite his parents' best intentions, fate intervened and he was born in Japan instead of Oakland, California. The tone for the rest of his life was established that moment, when he arrived between two nations. As a child in Oakland, Soo was a part of a world that was unsure of how to categorize him. As a Japanese American, I had to continuously negotiate two cultures, and anti-Asian sentiment was on the rise in the United States. Their humble but determined existence was marked by his father's occupation as a tailor and his mother's as a seamstress. Even in those formative years, he was distinctive. He was endearing and funny just by being himself, and his narrative skills would come to define his career. Afterwards, everything changed due to World War II. Suspicion and terror were directed at Japanese Americans following the Pearl Harbor assault. Soo and his family were forcibly moved to Utah's Topaz War Relocation Center under Executive Order 9066. There was a lot of hardship. The barracks were weak and provided little shelter from the severe weather in Utah. There was absolutely no secrecy. Even though they were citizens of their own nation, individuals and families who had previously enjoyed freedom suddenly found themselves confined. Still managed to emerge victorious from every storm. In the confines of the camp, he brought joy and optimism to his fellow inmates. To cheer up his fellow inmates, he put on events where he sang, did skits, and orchestrated everything. His magnetic personality made him a fan favorite inside the camp, and inmates started to view him as more than just another inmate. He was a performance. In Topaz, he initially realized that comedy might be a source of both entertainment and survival. Rebuilding after the war was no picnic. It took time for the bigotry that led to the internment of Japanese Americans to go away. Soo defied all expectations by enrolling at Berkeley and graduating with a degree in English. It was an incredible feat considering the very limited chances that Asian Americans still faced back then. His comedic and musical chops were honed when he worked the night shifts at nightclubs in San Francisco's Chinatown. Despite his talent, he faced an uphill fight when trying to get into the entertainment world. After World War II, having a Japanese name may be disastrous for your career in the United States. It was clear to Soo how deeply entrenched anti-Japanese prejudice was. And thus he decided. His name changed to Jack Soo. The name was more than a pseudonym. A plan had been made. Since Japanese was less stigmatized back then, it sounded more Chinese. In Cleveland, where he performed at nightclubs, his career took off because people there accepted him for who he was, regardless of his birth name. Not like a lot of comedians from his era, he avoided using over-the-top gestures and cliches. He stood out because of his easygoing, refined style. He became famous as a nightclub performer in the 40s and 50s. His breakthrough performance was at the legendary San Francisco nightclub Forbidden City in 1958, which highlighted Asian American artists. For the sake of the club's audience, many Asian performers had to assume Chinese identities, yet it was still one of the few venues where they could shine. With her quick wit and perfect timing, Soo wowed the audience as the MC. Hollywood icon Gene Kelly was among the notables in the crowd one night. Kelly recognized in Soo her extraordinary aptitude. A chance that would alter the course of Soo's career was presented to her that night. He was cast by Kelly in the Broadway musical Flower Drum Song, written and directed by Rodgers and Hammerstein. After establishing himself in supporting roles as Frankie Wing and Sammy Fong, respectively, Soo was promoted to the starring part of Sammy Fong, a nightclub owner torn between American heritage and modernity, thanks to his innate charm. When it premiered in 1958, the musical was revolutionary for its cast of mostly Asian Americans. An excellent example of this is Soo's performance. Soo played the lead role again in the 1961 film adaptation of Flower Drum Song by Hollywood. Being the first big Hollywood picture with an Asian American majority cast, the film made history. With a budget of $4 million, it managed to earn $10.7 million. Its $47.5 million total was dwarfed by that of West Side Story. Even yet, Soo's acting was highly acclaimed. The way he portrayed Sammy Fong stood apart from the majority of Asian characters in Hollywood during that era. He defied expectations by being self-assured, humorous, and really American. This part propelled Soo into the film and television industries, breaking down barriers that had long been in place for Asian American performers. After making a cameo appearance on The Jack Benny Show in 1962, he began his career on television. In the episode Jack Meets Japanese Agent, he portrayed a rude and aggressive talent agent. Despite the role's little size, it showcased his impeccable comic timing. Without converting them become caricatures, he could make characters humorous. Over the years, he was able to secure more guest appearances on hit series by using the same strategy. 2 appearances in the 1970s were of him on MASH. In his debut film, To Market, he portrayed Charlie Lee, a slick-talking drug dealer who outwitted the protagonists. His second appearance was in the Payday episode, when he portrayed the role of Kwok, a totally new character. The casting directors loved him because he could play any character with ease. He also made an appearance in the Firearms episode of Hawaii Five-0 about the same period, playing the role of Sam Kwang. His ability to handle tragic and comedic material equally was on full display in this performance, which was more serious. In the 1974 episode Oscar's promotion of The Odd Couple, Soo guest starred as Chok My Chin. His comedic timing was spot on, and he skillfully sidestepped stereotypical depictions of Asian characters. But landing the main part in the 1964 TV series Valentine's Day, which ran for just a few seasons, was one of his greatest accomplishments. He portrayed the self-assured bookie Rocky Sin, who lived in Rockwell. Casting an Asian American actor in a major role on a network TV show was almost unprecedented at the time. The show was a huge step forward for representation, despite its short run. Soo's filmography was equally eclectic. He had a role in the 1967 musical comedy Thoroughly Modern Millie as Ching Ho. The film, which featured Mary Tyler Moore and Julie Andrews, was a commercial success. In addition to Pat Morita's Bun Fu, Soo's character served as one of Mrs. Mears' subordinates. Soo brought charisma and compassion to the part, elevating it even if it was humorous. A year down the road, he had a very different part in John Wayne's Vietnam War picture The Green Berets. Colonel Kai, an officer in the Republic of Vietnam Army, was portrayed by him. Although the film's pro-war position caused controversy, Soo's acting grounded it in reality. He seldom got the opportunity to play a leading part in a big Hollywood picture. Both of these films, one a raucous military drama and the other a comedic musical, demonstrate his acting versatility. It wasn't only acting that Soo was good at. For Motown Records, he recorded a cover of For Once in My Life in 1965. In addition to becoming the first male vocalist to record the song, he became one of the first non-African American musicians to sign with the company. The intensity of the words was front and center in his rendition, which was slow and moving. However, the officials at Motown chose not to make it public. After 2 years, Stevie Wonder re-recorded the song with a quicker and more energetic sound, and it became an enormous smash, penetrating the pop and R&B charts at number 2. Despite being shelved, Soo's tape is nonetheless an intriguing historical artifact. Listeners may now hear his own interpretation of the song thanks to rediscovered historical recordings. While his stint with Motown may not have catapulted him to stardom, it did reveal a different aspect of his creative abilities. Throughout his career, Jack Soo broke several records. He broke barriers that had previously existed for Asian American artists in the entertainment industry. He has the unique talent of entertaining and informing audiences simultaneously. A tale of perseverance, comedy, and a long-forgotten vow that destiny never forgot is Jack Soo's path to playing Detective Nick Yemana on Barney Miller. His difficult childhood began the day he was born, Goro Suzuki, in 1917. The Utah internment camp known as the Topaz War Relocation Center was where he was transferred during World War II. He continued to make people happy even when he was in prison. He quickly rose to prominence as a beloved performer at the camp, entertaining other interns who were in dire need of a good laugh. He was aware that his birth name may be a constraint in the entertainment industry after the war. In the hopes that it would lead to additional opportunities, he changed it to Jack Soo. Starting out as a stand-up comic in Midwest nightclubs, he quickly rose to fame. There he crossed up with Danny Arnold, another comic going through tough times. It was in the late 1940s in Cleveland, and Sue would laugh afterwards about how Arnold had the worst nightclub act she had ever seen. Arnold was in the middle of nowhere when his automobile froze on a chilly Illinois morning. Sue helped him change a flat tire and would not take payment for her service. He chose to chuckle instead, assuring Arnold that he would be eternally grateful to him. After some time had passed, Arnold made sure to pay it back when he co-created Barney Miller. To play Nick Yemana, he cast Sue, a part that seemed tailor-made for him. Yamana stood apart from other Asian American characters on TV the minute he made his 1975 debut. His coffee was consistently subpar, and he possessed a sardonic sense of humor and easygoing demeanor. The other detectives couldn't stop making fun of it, claiming it had a pencil-like flavor or could instantly induce nausea. Nonetheless, Yamana seems unconcerned. He responded with a deadpan that further added to the joke's comedic value, taking it all in stride. However, Yamana had a purpose beyond that of a comedic relief figure. Along with being a talented investigator, he possessed intelligence and keen observational skills. As in homage to Sue's character, he had a gambling problem. Along with everyone else in the precinct, he was a true American. In 1970s America, that was a major event. Actors of Asian descent were cast in parts that perpetuated prejudices for many years. They frequently played supporting roles as maids, fighters, or characters with heavy accents. That type of post was one that Soo had previously declined. He aspired to portray genuine individuals, not stereotypes. He eventually had the opportunity with Yamana. The success of the program was due in equal parts to Soo's work behind the scenes and his on-screen performance. His friendliness and quick humor made him beloved by the cast and crew. Actor Hal Linden, who played Captain Barney Miller, frequently remarked on how Soo's genuine self-expression helped alleviate the strain of a hard day on set. The show's funniest moments would not have been possible without his improv abilities. A memorable remark from one of his stand-up routines was improvised. His comment that his coffee was so terrible it might be used as a weapon in an interrogation became one of the series' most famous quotes. His charisma and wit won him fans, but he was secretly fighting an invisible enemy. Doctors diagnosed him with esophageal cancer in 1977, during the 4th season of the program. Years of smoking had probably taken their toll on him, and he was 60 years old. He could have walked away right then, but he decided to keep working. Detective Nick Yemana, who he played, was beloved by viewers for his witty one-liners and infamously bad coffee. Soo maintained her commitment to the performance despite his deteriorating health. It got more difficult to disregard the impact of his condition as the season went on. His absence for the last 5 episodes of season 4 necessitated a change of direction for the writers. We met some new people. Carl Levitt, who played Ron Carey's cop, and Rosalind LaCorey, who played Maury Gorman's officer, both had more screen time. Soo made a triumphant return at the start of season 5, but it was obvious that he had changed. Aside from the apparent weight loss, the malignancy has spread. Even though it proved difficult to continue, he nevertheless managed to make an appearance in 9 episodes. The Vandal, his last show, broadcast on November 9, 1978. His sickness had become obvious by that point. Regardless, he delivered an unforgettable performance for the crowd. His stint on the Barney Miller set would be his last. On the show, Soo's final statement had an unsettling quality. "I have nothing to add," he nonchalantly said in The Vandal, playing the role of Nick Yemana. At the time, nobody realized those were going to be his last remarks on Barney Miller. That seemingly simple phrase, however, had a profound new significance following his demise. There was no way anybody could have anticipated this farewell. Still, it was ideal. The 5th season finale of Barney Miller, a memorial program to Jack Soo called Jack Soo, a retrospective, was shown on May 17, 1979. Unlike any previous episode, this one was completely unique. On this occasion, the ensemble accomplished something completely unprecedented in the history of the program. In recognition of a man who had been more than simply a co-star, they went against their usual roles. Jack Soo, who was 61 years old when he died on January 11, 1979, had already gone that year. Everyone who had worked with him felt a profound loss when he passed away. The producers took a risk by not using a conventional plot point to incorporate his absence into the program. They devoted a whole show to honoring his life and all that he did, both professionally and personally. The familiar 12th Precinct set of the New York Police Department served as the backdrop for the episode. This time, though, things were different. The plot was non-existent. No pre-recorded humor, no mystery to unravel. On the contrary, the entire cast, including Hal Linden, Max Gale, Ron Glass, Steve Landsberg, sat together naturally. Their anecdotes about Jack Soo included his generosity, his ability to make them laugh on set, and his knack for elevating even the most basic lines to something memorable. Prolonged oratory was superfluous. It was sufficient for their voices to be sincere. The segment featured some of Soo's most iconic scenes from her role as Detective Nick Yemana. The understated wit and dry humor that Yamana was known for had won over his fans. They included the now iconic inkblot test sequence among the footage they played. In it, a police psychiatrist shows Yamana an inkblot and asks him to interpret it. One of the funniest moments in the history of the program occurs when he gives unexpected and absolutely ludicrous comments with such a straight face. The hashish brownie incident was another scenario that they went over again. Comedy gold ensues as Yamana inadvertently consumes a tray of brownies laced with marijuana. He breaks into song and can't seem to stop. This is the kind of stuff that makes Jack Soo's talent stand out. However, humor was not the only purpose of the homage. Additionally, the effect that Soo had on television was discussed. The 1970s was a time when Asian American performers frequently found themselves cast in stereotypical roles. They had thick accents, were expected to be extremely serious, or were cast in supporting parts that didn't allow them to show any individuality. No way was Jack Soo going to be a part of that. He began his career in show business during a period of restricted opportunity, but he refused to let it stop him. He waited for jobs that would challenge him to grow rather than accepting parts that perpetuated old ideals. Yamana demonstrated that. He was more than just a cartoon. He exhibited all the hallmarks of a fully realized protagonist. He could hold his own in the teen room when it came to charisma and humor. Thanks to Jack Soo, it happened. The actors did the right thing by him as the program ended to pay honor to him. In his honor, they all raised their coffee mugs. Even though it was brief, the significance of that one moment was immense. Barney Miller's terrible coffee has been a running gag for quite some time. Every single cop in the precinct had voiced their disapproval of it. For a long time, the crowd had found it hilarious. However, at this point, the joke took on a deeper meaning. It came to represent the friendly energy and sense of fun that Jack Soo had brought to the program. Soo was able to maintain his humor right up until the end. "It must have been my coffee," he had joked with Hal Linden just before surgery. That was his character. Someone who, no matter how bad things became, could somehow manage to keep a grin on their face. The actors weren't only bidding farewell to Detective Yemana when they lifted their drinks in that last scene. Farewelling a buddy was what they were doing. They were bidding farewell to an actor who had transformed the public's perception of Asian Americans in television. They were bidding farewell to a guy who had brought daily laughter into their lives. He wed the lovely and kind Jan Steller in 1945. Steller had been a model before. Jane, Richard, and James were their 3 children, all brought up by them. Success doesn't have to mean sacrificing personal relationships. Soo proved this by consistently making time for his family despite the demands of Hollywood. He never wavered from his dedication to his family life, even as his profession flourished. Despite facing racism and navigating Hollywood as an Asian American actor, he and Jan remained married for decades. His friends and co-workers frequently remarked on his selflessness and how he never allowed his popularity to eclipse his commitment to his family and friends. His warmth and wit weren't just for the silver screen. His connections with his closest friends and family were characterized by them. Soo's early life struggles molded his strong sense of family. The Topaz War Relocation Center incarcerated him and other Japanese Americans during World War II, a terrible experience mandated by Executive Order 9066. Instead of letting resentment and hatred consume him, he came out stronger and with a determination that would last his whole life. In order to overcome the prejudice he encountered, he turned to comedy as a means of connecting with others. Being a treasured husband and father, as well as a beloved actor, was made possible by the same humor that provided warmth to his household. His loved ones were there for him during the worst of his fight with esophageal cancer in the 70s. He maintained his humor and optimism right up until the end. His witty banter persisted, making others around him laugh, demonstrating that humor was integral to his identity rather than an afterthought in his professional life. Equally influential to his influence in show business is his reputation as a devoted family guy. Soo was an outspoken supporter of Hollywood reform in addition to his private life. During a time when Asian actors were frequently cast in stereotyped parts, he stood firm against playing insulting or unrealistic roles. Instead of depicting Asian Americans as passive objects or with overblown accents, he was adamant about showing them as complete people. His stand cost him. Refusing responsibilities resulted in a decrease in potential chances. However, screen time was less important to Soo than ethics. His breakout role came on Barney Miller as Detective Nick Yemana. Yamana wasn't some foreign caricature like most Asian TV characters of that era. He was unmistakably American, as well as clever and perceptive. He had a knack with his dry humor that helped people think about racial prejudices without making them feel forced. Soo's act went beyond mere amusement. There was a subtle uprising against Hollywood's habit of distorting reality. Beyond his own professional life, he exerted himself. He openly voiced his opinion that Hollywood needed to evolve and that it needed to stop perpetuating old stereotypes. He was well aware that he was not alone in the fight for equitable representation. The goal was to set a precedent for Asian American performers of the future. The Hollywood scene started to change, however slowly, because of his bravery. Soo was exceptional because he combined comedy with cultural pride in a unique way. Although he never tried to hide his roots, he also refused to allow them limit him. Yamana consistently brought an air of intellect and self-respect to her jokes about cultural misconceptions on Barney Miller. Soo handled racial preconceptions in a way that didn't make him feel bad about himself. His personal experiences served as the basis for this method. He knew the pain of prejudice from his experience with incarceration during the war. He could have reacted angrily, but he chose to utilize comedy as a catalyst for positive change. Never in his comedic career did he parody himself. To make them laugh while also making them think was the goal. He persisted in calling for more accurate portrayals even while he was not on film. He was adamant about portraying complex characters and declined parts that made fun of his background. He had bigger dreams than being an actor. His goal was to alter the stereotypes that Asian Americans faced in show business. By making these groundbreaking decisions, he demonstrated that humor might subvert preconceptions rather than perpetuate them. Laughter, honesty, and perseverance are the hallmarks of Jack Soo's legacy. By entertaining while simultaneously dismantling boundaries, he demonstrated to the world that comedy could serve as both a weapon and a shield. For all those who think representation should be genuine, considerate, and relatable, he is an inspiration, and not only for Asian American performers.